Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe.
We've officially kicked off. We have officially kicked the proverbial sound ball. We've got my buddy Mike Kaplan back again on the program. Thank you for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. I'm excited because we get to talk about your new album.
Thank you, my friend, for having me. Always, I'm happy to return to any podcast of a dear friend as often as possible. Happy to take it over if you want to take a break for an incarnation or two. Yeah, thank you for having me on for this or any reason.
Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure to share space and thoughts and words with you, and it always has been since we first became friends through stand-up comedy. And thank goodness for stand-up comedy for many reasons. This is one of them. Now the album's out. The album came out this week.
That's right.
When we're recording this in the past, from when the people will be listening to it in the future, which is then their present. Now the let's talk about the album a little bit, because I love anything that's liminal space, right? And I love all the in between, and because that's where I think a lot of magic takes place, is in the spaces that are between, like, the official spaces, right?
Well, this is really fortunate because I don't know if you remember the name of the album or exactly why you're introducing it like this, but yeah, the album is called Live in Between Albums, and the reason for that is I recorded an album in 2016 called No Kidding, and the theme of that album was I don't want kids, and that was the first real, like, themed hour that I did, and it wasn't, it wasn't a one-man show. It wasn't all about, but it all stemmed from that concept. And then in 2020, I released an album called AKA, short for All Killing Aside. The themes of that album ended up being love, compassion, not murdering. So one of them was about not wanting there to be more kids, and one of them was about not wanting there to be fewer people due to murder. And so ultimately, I'm standing on a platform of same number of people, remain constant, no one in, no one out. I'm a life bouncer here. And
you're a freeze. You want a hard freeze right now. We're going to get a hard freeze on
I think
numbers.
We're good, yeah. I think we got it. I think this is just perfect. It's like just on the brink, like we're like a car teetering on a bridge. Like don't move, anyone. No, I think we can get. No, don't just stay. Just stay right here. Or like the Buddhist parable of the guy who's like running away from a tiger, and he's like, oh no, tigers behind him, multiple tigers probably, and then he comes to a cliff and he climbs down, and he's like, I'm gonna climb down, but then at the bottom of the cliff there's also tigers. He's like in Tigerland for whatever reason. He's like, tigers above, tigers below. Right to the side of him, strawberries growing out of the mountain. Takes a strawberry, eats it, the sweetest strawberry that he's ever had in his life. And that's all of what we're doing all of the time. We're all just, in a car teetering over a cliff. Tigers about to attack us, but they're about to. They're above, they're behind, they're below, they're in front. But right here, just eating some strawberries. And that's what this album is. This album is the strawberries in between those two themed albums. Because here's the thing. I don't know if I feel like you've written albums with themes. You've written hours of comedy that have through lines and concepts that go together. And then also every once in a while you write a joke or a thing that happens that's funny, and you're like, well, that doesn't go with the theme. And so I had a lot of jokes over the years that I hadn't recorded, and that now I'm like, well, it doesn't, these don't go with this theme, and they don't go with that theme, but I wanna share them with the people. These misfit, these jokes that didn't seem to belong anywhere. We're like, hey, look, you belong together here in this place. Kind of like the way when I went to summer camp, I was like, my school life was, I was like, oh, who do I hang out with? What do I do? It seems kind of lonely. I don't have a ton of friends in high school, but summer camp, was colorful and rainbow filled to school's dreary black and white and gray. And I felt like my whole summer camp was full of misfits and art artsy weirdos and other outcasts that all come together to be like, we all belong together because we didn't belong anywhere else. And so now we're all the missing pieces of each other's amulets. And that's what this album is. The jokes that didn't fit anywhere. And so they fit on this very album that I recorded in 2017 at my friend Rob Green's show, The Gas at Great Scott, which sadly the venue went away during the pandemic. RIP venue, Great Scott. And then I released it only with our buddy, our fellow, we are label mates on Blonde Medicine, Dominic Delbenny. Helped me release it into the world only in a limited, you like a liminal space. This was a limited way that it only was on satellite radio. You could only hear it by virtue of the satellites. You know, you could only outer space could help you listen to this album for several years, for many years. People would hear it on Sirius, and they'd email me and they'd be like, how can I get these tracks? How can I have them? How can I was like, you got the only way that you did. It just in the ethereal, impermanent way that they went into you, they went out of you, they're still in you. But now, good news. It's widely available. Everyone can hear the jokes that didn't belong, the jokes that they said couldn't be told, couldn't be heard, couldn't be released widely until March of 2023. Yeah, so that's the story. That's one story of the album.
And we're out of time. So thank you for listening, everybody.
I said thanks for letting me take over your podcast.
No, it's a wonderful thing. You're talking about these jokes that don't fit, and I'm thinking you called them Misfits, and I'm like, oh, the island of misfit jokes, and then you go and then you jump right into summer camp, and I'm like, oh, now it's not the island of misfit toys, it's the island of misfit boys and girls, trying to fit in. So first of all, the
island of misfit joys. Yeah.
Oh, I like that as well. That's a great name for something.
This episode, I don't know if you name your episodes.
Yeah, but, maybe I start now. I mean, there's no rules. There's really no rules. We love Blonde Medicine. We love Dominic. We love everything that he's doing. It is really cool though that there was an album out there that people couldn't get. You had to be in the moment, right? You had to be in the moment of time to be lucky enough to catch whenever the tracks were being spun by the programmers over at Sirius XM radio. And so it is kind of this, mystery album out there, right? And if you haven't listened to Mike's previous albums, which I'm sure you have, his previous work, I mean, you gotta check it out. You gotta dig into it. And I'm trying to remember the name of the music album. It's Chair, or what was it?
Oh, you're absolutely on the right track. Chair is a good. You know it. There's the cover of the album has a chair, or the back of the album. You can do it if you want to, or I'll help you along.
Musical chairs.
That would be an even better name for it, but it is now. But that musical chairs, that's fun. If you work in like the department at a college that is responsible for like the orchestra and the jazz band and the choruses and stuff, I feel like all the people in charge of those are the musical chairs. The musical chair people of the various boards. But I'll tell you that there's three words to the title. Blank be blankin'. I gave you the middle word. The middle word is B, like Johnny Be Good. It's like Johnny Be Good. It's like Michael B. Jordan. It's like
it's like ABCing.
Oh yeah, you almost got it. 100%. You're almost there.
God, it's God.
And remember, there's a chair is a good guess. So the final word.
Something. The final word is seat. No.
Seated is correct. Blank
seated.
Be
please
seated.
Be seated. Please be seated.
That's the one.
Yes.
And what if I was like, actually, my music album's name is Many Musics. I do have another one that is called that as well. But yes, Please Be Seated came out about 10 years ago. Micah Sherman, my dear friend, and I used to do, and still every once in a while, who knows? But we used to write songs together, and we hosted shows, and we played our weird, fun comedy songs, and they are available as well. But in addition to the various not, I don't want to say non-musical comedy album. I feel like all of my stand-up, I guess when I say, I'm like, all of my stand-up albums are musical in a way. There's musicality to like the rhythm of jokes, but I don't play instruments on most of my stand-up albums. I'll make that case. That is clear.
Yeah, there's no instrumentation.
Yeah.
Well, the voice is
The
an
human voice, the human
is
vocal
an,
cords,
is
of
an
course,
instrument,
absolutely.
and one might say the most powerful of all instruments.
Oh yeah. Do you know that I in college was in an a cappella group
I
and
didn't.
all
If I did know that, I had forgotten it, and I'm glad you reminded
sure.
me because
You
I'm thinking barbershop quartet, but obviously this is a little bit different. I'm guessing we were black turtlenecks, black slacks,
that's a great question and I don't remember what we wore, but I'll
but you
look it up.
matched, right? Did
I'll
you all
ask someone.
match on
I,
purpose?
I think it was, I'm sure that we had a look, but the reason that I'm bringing it up for two reasons. Number one, we were an all male a cappella group and our name was Voicemail. And I didn't come up with it, but I would have, and I wish I did. And we went on tour once, and you know how an acapella means, it literally means in the style of the chapel, which used to mean that they didn't let instruments in the chapel, so that's why acapella, practically speaking, means no instruments, just voices. And so instead of having like a percussionist, you have a vocal percussionist. You don't have drums, you have somebody making the beatboxing sounds with their face. And here's the reason I bring this up. One time I remember we went on tour and performed with different colleges, sort of all around the Eastern Seaboard. We went to a place, I think it was Virginia, and I don't think these were the only people who did this, but in, the way that people will do a bass drum often would be like a do, like they would just say do in a low voice or boo, or like it was, but something with their voice. But these guys, their vocal percussionist wasn't just a vocal percussionist. He beat his chest for the bass. He made himself literally the bass drum. And we were like, can you do that? Is that even like, is that cheating? Because you're supposed to do it with your voice. But he's like, that's all part of the body, all part of a human, not using an instrument except for myself. That's it. That's got to be allowed.
He went outside the lines.
Yes.
And, yeah, okay. I don't know. I wouldn't want to do too many songs.
No, it's hard. It takes a fortitude to pound yourself in the chest loud enough that the audience can hear it. Maybe they had a microphone up to his chest as well. Who can say?
Well, there's martial artists, and people who practice the art. They and because I remember I was driving, I was on a long drive with a friend of mine who I don't remember which style or which martial art he was in, but he would take this wooden stick and I've seen it in a movie. It's The Accountant starring Ben Affleck too. I don't know. I can't believe I remember that. Anyway, you take this stick. It's like I can't remember what they called it, a bead stick or whatever. And he would just be tapping his shins with constantly, like slightly bruising his shins to harden them over time.
Wow.
So he wouldn't feel pain when someone kicks him in the shins. And
like in The Princess Bride when the man in black, we learn, I'm spoiler alert, please if you haven't seen The Princess Bride, pause right now, watch The Princess Bride. There's a scene where a man takes poison and we learn that he has made invulnerable to the poison by taking little bits of it, increasing amounts over days, months, years, whatever it is. And that's what this guy's doing with his shit. And he's like, little hit in the shin in some way. He's like, yeah, I'm immune. He developed an immunity to kicks in the shin.
Yeah, he just like in The Princess Bride, and then
The Accountant and The Princess Bride. I think of them like just they're one neuron in my brain, as my girlfriend Rini has introduced into my vernacular. They share a neuron.
That's interesting. I just see them like almost on like a teeter-totter. And like depending on which side is higher,
absolutely.
it's Accountant, and then it goes down, and then it's Princess Bride, which one gets slightly favored in certain moments on that same neuron that's teetering on. Who knows, maybe
Oh
a
yeah.
fragment of his
Like the
soul.
car on the cliff.
Yeah,
Everything is
everything is
teetering
in
and or
balance.
tottering. Yeah.
Everything is in balance. Speaking of
Can I
which, no, yes, you can. Where are
yes.
you going with this?
Okay. I just have a thing about the accountant that I
Okay.
want to tell you. Like number one, the
You have
accountant, the
fun
first
facts about
job that I
the
was
you have fun facts about the
yeah, I
movie?
have
Is that
two one thing about the movie, one thing about accounting in general. Fun facts about accounting. I'm doing a brief accounting of the two things that I'll tell you about the accountant and accounting. One is that accountant was like a job that one of the first jobs that I'd heard of because I was good at math as a child, and my family, my grandmother was all like, "You should be an accountant." And I feel like that was like hypnosis for a child. Like I should be an accountant. And like one time we were down the Jersey Shore, my family and I saw a guy like making fudge by like throwing it in the air like pizza dough, and I was like, that looks like fun. And my mom's like, oh, do you want to do that for a living? And I'm like, looks like fun, but I'm gonna be an accountant. Like I was already indoctrinated. I took an accounting class in high school, but the thing that I wanted to share about the movie The Accountant is I think I've seen it, and I don't remember for sure if I've seen it. And isn't that a really? I think it's a fascinating state. Like I think if I watched it tonight, I bet my guess, if I had to pick, I'm like 51% I've seen it. That if I put it on tonight, I'd be like, oh yeah. And every moment that a thing happens, like, yes, of course. Yeah, yes, yeah, yes. But right now, I can tell you nothing other than like even before you said Ben Affleck, I might not have even been able to tell you that it's Ben Affleck. But I'm like, oh yeah, he's a guy who works at an office, and also he is a killer, a spy, a guy who does. He's an accountant, but also he's not like I know almost nothing about the movie, and yet I I have a vague memory that I've seen it. And isn't that weird that we, these bodies are the thing conventionally that we're like, yeah, this thing was in front of that thing for a while, and I think there's like such a liminal, a weird, almost connection back to it. But I'm like, well, I know I'm here now. I know I'm watching this. I know I've seen Ryan Singer talking about The Accountant, that for sure. But The Accountant, there's just no accounting.
there is no accounting, and it's wild because it reminds me of one of my favorite moments in just being alive when I was in college, 20 plus years ago. A friend of mine, we were watching Mission Impossible or something, or I can't remember. It was one of those type movies where there's like a twist, right? And after we're done with the movie, my buddy says to me, in with 100% earnest, uh, totally earnest when he said it. He said, it occurs to me, I've seen this movie before, and it's it's really it's really interesting that you know everything that's going to happen when you've already seen the movie. And he's like, I knew everything that was going to happen. It's almost as if he was disappointed that he could predict what was going to happen after telling us he'd already seen it, as if that should not have he should have no memory of it. And I'm just like, wait, you're upset that you knew? He's like, this is what he said. He goes, you know what? It's predictable. And he said the movie was predictable, and then let us know that he'd already seen it, but that it was predictable nonetheless. And all of us were shocked by what happened in the movie. He was the only one who thought it was predictable, and he's the only one who also had admitted to already having seen it. Now, in a side note to this, very recently, comedian Dave Waite, and I were talking about Creed 3, the movie Creed 3. And I had this moment where he's talking about, he's like, hey, everybody's going to see Creed 3 or something. And I was like, what took everyone so long? He goes, what do you mean? It just came out. I go, no, I've seen this movie. And he said, no, it just came out. And I said, I've seen the movie. It's with Jonathan Majors from Lovecraft Country on HBO, which is one of my all-time favorite television programs. It's like his old friend, he ended up going to jail. I'm not giving any spoilers, by the way. And then he goes, well, what happened? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, oh my God, have you seen it? And I go, how is it possible that I've seen this movie that just came out? And I don't know if, like, I saw the trailer so many times just in other things that I think, because I mean, I don't claim to be the smartest individual, but I know the difference between seeing a trailer and seeing a movie. You know what I mean?
But I had this experience with the movie Amistad, which I didn't see, but I truly believe that at the time, like a little before it came out, when it came out, I I wouldn't be surprised if the total running time of how much I've seen the trailer of it equaled the length of the movie. So like you may, depending how often you saw the trailer for this movie, may, obviously it's different. You're only seeing a small piece of it, but sometimes a trailer is so like comprehensive in a way. Like sometimes a trailer really gives you like enough data points that you're, like our brains do this all the time. Like I took a class in college called perception. It was a psychology class. And are you familiar with, in Boston, there's the Citgo sign, Citgo gas. It's like a landmark on top of the Barnes & Noble where I used to work. You might not know that part. You might not know any. Citgo's symbol, it's like a triangle. It's like three, like, orangish, brownish triangle. And the Citgo sign, it looks like there's a little triangle that turns into a big triangle because of the way it light, right? One bigger, biggest. Like it's like a little one in the middle, and it looks like it's growing, but it's not growing. But our brains think it is because the way our brain see, like, oh, the brain fills in the gaps, which is a weird thing because how does our brain know what's going to happen? It doesn't. It does it like after the fact. It's like, oh, the brain saw the thing look like it's getting bigger and then recreated the memory that's like, okay, it looks like it's growing, even though it's just three separate things lighting up. And so I feel like sometimes a movie preview, a movie trailer is like that, where we will fill in the spaces. It gives you a point, another point, and another point. We're like, well, then I clearly know everything that's going to, if that happens and this happens and that happens, then this is everything that happens. And I don't have to see the movie Creed 3 or what have you.
Yeah, I do. I think you're right. I think some movie trailers are so comprehensive that they're just the cliff notes of the movie. I don't need to see it. I could write the book report on the movie, and people would be like, "Oh, he's seen the movie." And also, I think, and I don't know if it's because of the advent of streaming and maybe we're reaching a tipping point, potentially, but I think when I say I've already seen Creed 3, that doesn't even necessarily mean I've seen it. But I've seen. I already know exactly what's going to happen in Creed 3, and I think that's because we in the entertainment industry, maybe, and who write scripts and things like that, maybe we've studied and watched so much and gotten into the the skeleton of the storytelling aspect of it in such a way that we just assume everyone knows what's coming. Or the all is lost moment will be on minute 80 to 85. We all know it's going to happen.
Yeah. Here's two things, or three, or five, or seven. First, of course, maybe you just know what's happening in Creed 3 because you saw Creed 1 plus Creed 2, and that obviously adds up to it.
Did you just go Fibonacci on me?
I think I may have. I prefer the Truthanacci, but so here's two things. One, when you introduced this concept, I love that you said, like, here's one of my favorite thing that I forget the way you said it. I want to go back and listen, but you're like, one of my top moments in being alive. I really like that. I want to see your top 10 moments in being alive for Ryan Singer. But then I just want to first affirm and reiterate what a weird thing that your friend to say that a movie is predictable that you've seen, like that like it reminds me. I used to tell a joke about the movie The Core, which was like Hilary Swank and people have to go to the center of the earth because the earth's core has stopped moving, stopped rotating, and the planet there'll be a disaster. And I'm watching this movie and I'm predicting everything that's going to happen. Not like predictable things, even just things like, I think that thing's going to like roll over that guy's foot when the vehicle shifts, and it does. And I'm like, am I a genius, or have I seen this movie? I forgot that I'd seen the movie. And here's the funny thing is also, I know that I wrote that joke. I'm not sure if I've put that joke on an album. I think I may have, but I now don't even know. I might put this joke on another album because with the idea being like, I don't remember if I put this joke on an album, but isn't that now it's a different joke. Now it's a new joke that I forgot my own creation. Oh man, I had one.
And it's very
other
onomatopoeic in a
thing.
way too, to be able to forget that if you even put the joke on an album, if you've already told the joke, not knowing, you know, and the
Yeah.
joke is about a movie that you've already seen and you didn't remember you'd seen it. So I think it has to go on an
100%.
album
And so,
regardless.
yeah, I think it will. And I think I had another part, but it might be gone now.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no.
So
It was me saying too
you
many
were
things.
watching. How many people were there when you were doing this with the core? The movie core. Do you remember?
With the core, I don't, you know, I don't remember. I'll be. There's a thing that I love. I love the Dalai Lama, and I love that. I learned that at one point he was asked a question, and the answer he gave is the similar answer to I aspire to be like him. He said, "That's a very good question. The answer is simple. I don't know." So the answer to who was there, how many people were there, like I only remember the core of the experience was like realizing, feeling like, oh my, it felt like it was like, I think I grew up, I was good in school. I got good grades. I knew the difference between a movie, a full movie, and a trailer. And I also, being smart was a part of my identity. It was a large part of it. I'm way smarter than that now than to have it be still a part of my identity. Obviously, identity. Who needs identities? Not me. This guy. This ego. This thing. Just the stuff. And I think that this was an example. This is so memorable because it felt like I was smart when I was predicting everything correctly. And then it was like an M. Night Shyamalan twist where, and I think this might even be part of the joke that I don't remember putting on an album that I think I did now. I really do think I did. But that I'm like, oh, the twist ending was I was dumb the whole time. I didn't like that. I knew things because I learned them, not because I was guessing or predicting. Like I was post-dicting them.
That is,
I wasn't dicting them before. I was dicting them after.
Yeah, you were dictating.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, which Socrates says is all learning is memory. And that's why the Socratic method is he asks questions and gets people to come up with the answers from within themselves, which sounds, Socrates makes sense to me. I don't want to be too controversial.
Yeah, well,
but,
it sounds like
I'm with Socrates.
How some people describe Christopher Nolan's filmmaking, where I think it was after. Oh shoot! What was the big the space one that came out about 4
Interstellar.
Interstellar, and they're like, well, how do you? So you had to do a bunch of research into black holes and all that kind of stuff. And I think something, and I'm not getting this correct, but his response was something along the lines of, no, I just kind of like spent a lot of time thinking about it and curiously working things out, like extrapolating them by like just wondering like, well, I wonder if this happens, then maybe this happens. But so something like that. So that it seems to line up with the Socratic method in a way where I would be interested if anyone listening knows Christopher Nolan could ask him that.
That would be well. I don't know him personally, but I have written a lot of jokes about his movies, and I'll do two things. Number one, I'll think about it a lot. Number two, we'll try to incept the idea into him that he should come on the show and tell you about it. Number three, I remembered the thing from earlier. I am excited to share. My friend, I don't know if you know the comedy writer and writer in general, Ben Acker, a friend of mine. Fantastic, funny, kind human. And he He has a book called Stories to Keep You Alive Despite Vampires, a very delightful title and book full of stories in the vein of, like a kid's scary book, but also for grown-ups, and fun and funny. Ben told me this thing here. Oh, this is kind of perfect. I mean, I think it's exactly perfect. I'll tell you he told me a thing, and then later I went back to him and I was like, remember how you told me this thing? And he's like, oh, the way that you remember it is not how I remember telling it to you.
God, I'm having
So-
deja vu. So I'm having this is so wild that it ties into the subject matter and everything. Keep going.
So I'll tell you what I thought it was in the middle between when he told me and when he told me that what I thought it wasn't what he told me. I thought he told me, and so for a while I believed that he said that every great movie is great in one of two ways. One of the ways a movie can be great is for its ending to be surprising, right? That makes a lot of sense. A surprise. Wow, didn't see that coming at all. That's what, of course, comedy, great art. So much is about mystery and things being revealed. And obviously, if it's not surprising, then why watch it? What's the big deal? Who you could see it coming? Who cares? He said the other way that a movie could be great is for the ending to be inevitable. And I was like, oh, like, you're watching Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day doesn't end with a twist, right? This guy's got to get out of this thing, right? That's clearly what's coming. It's like we're heading to that. It's got to be that. You get to the end, and it's not surprising in the way that, a twist, a Christopher Nolan or a Twistifer Nolan, that's what I call him now, a movie is, or an M. Night Shyamalan or what have you. But it's inevitable. And so I was like, Ben, that was really cool. Thank you for sharing that thing with me. And he's like, oh, and now I don't want, look, this is just my impression of him through my own filter, which might be my own creation again. But I think he was like, no, the thing that I told you was every great movie is great in this way, that the ending is both surprising and inevitable. And I was like, oh,
that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Wow, that is, because when you were describing this to me, I was like, wow, yeah, because if it's not inevitable, I mean, I guess we go into every movie thinking the ending will be inevitable, and then when it's not, it's surprising. And so those are your only two choices. But now we're talking about them being simultaneous.
Yes.
Which is surprising, but maybe also inevitable.
Oh, yeah. Do you know about the surprise test paradox?
I don't think I do. And if I do, I don't know it by its formal name.
Sure. It could be.
Wait. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
1 second. We're going to talk about the surprise test paradox here in a second, but real quick, we're going to take a break. I'm going to throw in some ads here because we got to keep the candles burning.
Absolutely.
So patreon.com/Ryan Singer if you want ad-free interviews and experiences and all that good stuff. Also, I posted episode 3 of The Bridge, the paranormal documentary series I've been making, sneak peek for patrons only. I'm not going to be releasing the last 3 episodes until they're all finished. So you're getting that at least a month or so in advance. So sneak peek for episode 3 is over there at The Bridge right now, $3 a month. Get you most of almost everything. So we'll be right back with Mike Kaplan. And we're back. I'm talking with dear friend Mike Kaplan. We just got done talking about Twistifer Nolan, and I think we were also talking about. I was trying to work inevitable into M. Night Shyamalan, like Ev to Shyamalan, and in Ev Shyamalan. It's not working over here. There's too many syllables. But we're going to talk about the surprise test paradox, which I don't think I've heard of.
I appreciate it. I'm excited. It has many names, or at least one other name that I've heard of. So perhaps you've heard it, but I'll tell it to you. But first, right after this message from my girlfriend, who can only hear my side of our conversation as I'm listening to you in my headphones, but she did hear what I've been saying and texted me that she thinks also some of the best jokes are surprising and inevitable, or at least they feel that way, and I am on board with that as well.
I 100% am on board with that as well. That's a That's wonderful. I love that.
I thank you, and we'll pass it along. And now, as promised, the moment we've all been waiting for a few minutes.
The inevitable.
The inevitable, the surprising surprise test paradox, which I'm now going to call the inevitable surprise test paradox. So the way it works is Friday afternoon in a class in a school, the teacher says, all right, class, next week, we're going to have a surprise test on one of the days of the week that we have class, Monday through Friday. So you're not going to know what day it is going to be. So it'll be a surprise as to which day it happens. Then over the weekend, the students all start, noodling on that. And they're like, well, okay, then. They all think, they're like, that means it can't be Friday, because if it hasn't happened by Friday, if it didn't happen up to Thursday, then there's no way it can be a surprise, right? It can't be, if you've had all the days but Friday, it can only happen Friday. It couldn't be a surprise if it happened Friday. So we've ruled out Friday. Very smart. Then they're like, so the last possible day it could be is Thursday. And by similar logic, they're like, well, then it can't be Thursday, because if it hasn't happened by Wednesday, then it has to be Thursday, because same thing. So then they're like, so the last possible day it could be is Wednesday. And by that logic, they rule out every day of the week, which is why it is such a surprise when it does happen on Thursday.
That is really fun, though, to
oh yeah.
Those are some of my favorite things. And there's been times where certain groups of us will be hanging out, and it becomes, the conversations sometimes focus on kind of riddles, sometimes they're street jokes, sometimes there's a million different things. And I have to tell you this because it keeps happening to me, and it's directly resultant from you. And we're talking years. I'm trying to remember what year. I think it was 2016, where it was like Zach Sherwin, you, she was with us. We went down to like San Diego area and we did this theater show. And then there was, anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Aaron Judge?
Yes.
Yeah. Baron Vaughn, maybe too? I don't.
Oh,
maybe.
I don't think Baron was there with. Okay. Anyway, we were sitting at a restaurant before the show, and in a booth, wooden tables. I remember them very distinctly, like mahogany, dark wood, very shiny and slick, and good lacquer, good restaurant lacquer. So things, so easy to clean. And we were doing riddles, and I think we were trying to I do have fun trying to make up short riddles sometimes, but there was a riddle that you were telling us that I could not figure out. And to this day, every time I am by a light switch, even though it's not a light switch specific in the riddle, I am tortured by this. And the riddle is something about, there's like a prison, right? And someone gets to go in and you get to flip up like a unlock gate switch, or like there's a switch involved, right? Do you know what riddle I'm talking about?
It definitely rings a bell or lights up something. Is it this one that there's 3 light bulbs and 3 switches, and you're allowed to it's something. I'm gonna do a brief Googling and see.
For some reason, I think there's a prison involved, or it's like and I don't know, and that could be wrong. I could be misremembering it, or I could be conflating 2 separate riddles.
Okay,
together.
Here is something that I've gotten by searching for 3 light bulb prison. Is it this? There are 100 prisoners in solitary cells. There's a central living room with 1 light bulb, which is initially off, and no prisoner can see the light bulb from their own cell. Every day, the warden picks a prisoner equally at random, and that prisoner visits the living room. While there, they can toggle the bulb if they wish. Also, they have the option of asserting the prisoner has the option of asserting that all 100 prisoners have been to the living room by now. If the assertion is false, all prisoners are shot. However, if it's true, they're all set free and inducted into Mensa, since the world could always use more smart people. Thus, the assertion should only be made if the prisoner is 100% certain of its validity. They're allowed to get together one night in the courtyard to discuss a plan. What plan should they agree on so that someone will make a correct assertion? Is that the exact one or not exactly?
I don't know. It seems parts of it seem familiar. I don't remember the Mensa part and the being shot.
Oh,
part.
no, of course
No.
not.
It's interesting. I'm gonna have to. And here's the thing: I have never.
No, this is the
I've
one that
never
I
looked
thought it
for
was.
I've never looked
I
for
had.
it.
Okay.
Okay.
This is better. This one's just 3 bulbs and 3 switches. There's
Okay.
a room with a door that's closed. Yeah, this is the one that I thought it was.
Then it's
Room with
probably
a door
this one.
that's closed. 3 light bulbs inside. Outside the room, 3 switches connected to the bulbs.
Yes.
You may manipulate the switches as you wish, but you can't. Once you open the door, you can't change it. The bulbs are all in working condition. And hold on, an ad. And you can only open the door once. Identify each switch with respect to its bulb. How do you do that?
Okay. Yeah. I just remember being like, I don't have any clue what I'm doing here.
Would you like the answer to that one that I do know?
Let's do it let's read it one more time, and so we can actually piece together everything that was said one more time.
Sure. Okay.
For everybody listening.
And
myself.
Outside.
Mostly.
Okay. There is a room with a door that is closed. 3 light bulbs are inside the room. Outside the room, there are 3 switches connected to the bulbs. You can flip the switches as you wish, but once you open the door, you can't change it. All the bulbs are in working condition, and you can only open the door once. And the goal is to identify which of the 3 switches goes with which of the 3 bulbs.
Oh, okay. And so it said you can only open the door once, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you open the door once initially, and then you flip each switch as you wish once the door is open to see which ones they apply to.
No, I think you can only flip the switches when the door is closed. You can't flip them while it's open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can flip all the switches and while you're not looking at the lights. But once you open the door and can see the light bulbs, you can't flip the switches.
God, I mean, there's probably some really simple answer that I'm not seeing here, but I wonder if there's, well, it doesn't mention any kind of window. You know what you can do? Well, you just pay attention to the light coming from underneath the door when you flip the switches.
No, I think that we have to rule that out. It is not a part of the solution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're just trying to figure out which switch goes to which bulb, right?
Yes.
So when you walk in the room, you want to know, like, okay. So there's 3 bulbs. There's 3 switches.
Yeah. So, for example, if there were only 2 bulbs and 2 switches, and let's say, I think it has to be assumed, I think it's implied that it all starts, all the lights are off. The switches are all down.
So it's not a trick. It's not like a downstairs stairs and an upstairs stairs where they could be in the wrong position. They could be on but off.
Exactly. I think that leave that part out. So if there were only 2 bulbs, then that would mean if you turn one on and leave one off, then you know which one is which. But with 3 that you don't know which one goes to which, what's the extra secret thing that you can do
to figure it out? And there's probably people listening right now being like, Ryan, this is so obvious. Why don't But then there's probably others who still need more time.
Do you know what I think? I won't tell the answer right now, but there's a kind of riddle like this that, like, there's some people who are really great at lateral thinking puzzles. Like, if you've never heard this, I'm sure there are some people listening who are like, oh yeah, I have an idea. And then there's also people that are listening that are like, it's so obvious, it's so predictable, because, like your friend, they have seen this riddle before, and they may have forgotten that they have seen this riddle before, just like whatever the movie was that I don't even remember, Creed 3. I think
Yes,
every movie.
it was Creed 3, the core. At the core of Creed 3, there was
Yeah.
an impossible mission. The well, let's give the answer at the end.
Okay.
Let's do that.
And
if we can remember to do that.
yes. In the meantime, I feel like I was gonna say, oh yeah, I know what the other thing. I'm like, what is the mystery that I have prepared for you now? It is this. I have here, if I remember correctly, it'd be really weird if we thought a different thing, but I Googled, I went through my Gmail. Is it Googling when it's through your own email? I searched and found out that it was October 31st, 2014,
Wow,
that
2014.
the Amham Show and the San Pedro Art Association presented Mike Kaplan and Friends live stand-up comedy with Zach Sherwin, Ryan Singer, Aaron Judge, and
Baron Vaughn.
Baron Vaughn.
He was there. He's going to be so mad that I
I mean, our memory is such a it's such a slippery thing. Do you know how in the English language there is an idiom to say like, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Have you ever heard this? I heard it only recently from my friend Gus, who I don't know if he got it from his original language of Portuguese or if he gleaned it from another American English dialect somewhere. But some things are so complex and slippery. It's like trying to catch an eel by the tail. Like I've almost got the eel by the tail is
oh wow,
the way.
No, I've never heard catch an eel by its tail.
Yeah, we've heard of tiger, of course. Back to them. But let me see. Let's see. I'm searching for catch. Yeah, I don't got the eel. Maybe it's not even to catch an eel by the tail, but it's something about an
got an
eel
eel by its tail.
Yeah, an eel by the tail. Let's see.
I mean, there's the greased pig one, which kind of is in the same neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Slippery, can't get your hands on it.
Yeah, I found from the freedictionary.com, hold an eel by the tail is to try and engage or somehow detain an elusive person or thing. And so I think that sometimes memory itself, like trying to extract a memory or every aspect of a memory, like you had the truth, you had nothing but the truth, you just didn't have the whole truth of that memory. As how can we be expected? The whole truth, that's a whole lot of truthing going on.
Yeah, there's no way to eat the whole truth pie by yourself in these situations.
Exactly.
There is I do remember. I remember so much about 2014 now, October 31st, 2014, because there was freestyle at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% Baron was there. It's so obvious that Baron was there now that I know he was there.
Inevitable,
so
even.
predictable.
Yeah. And surprising.
And I also came up with the slight change to the joke about the fountain of youth, where I said, you gave me the line Pants de Leon. I remember that. 100%. I remember Pants de Leon came out that night. Okay, so it's
real quick.
Yeah.
I just a brief interlude relating to the thing that you just said and Aaron Judge, who is a comedian who I love and a dear friend who I love, who I started out with about 21 years ago in Boston, and she used to have a joke that she would tell, and I saw her do it one night, and I told her that I liked a part of it, and the joke specifically was, George W. Bush was president, and Condoleezza Rice was a cabinet member, I believe, or a minister,
Secretary of State, maybe.
That's the one. Yeah, somebody. Yeah, I'd say Secretary of State sounds right. Look at your memory. And I think Aaron's joke was something like that. Condoleezza Rice seems like the student in class that's like, ooh, like, teacher, you forgot to assign us homework, or like when the teacher's like, and what did the dossier say? Ooh, it's bin Laden, promised to attack in the United States, and then the teacher would say, very good, Condoleezza, 5 points to Slytherin. And I remember, I forget the whole joke, but I remember that part of it. And I remember going up to Erin afterwards, and I was like, Erin, that part about Slytherin is really funny. And she's like, are you messing with me? And I was like, no, I really think it's funny. And she says, oh, the reason I'm asking you that is because that's a tag that you gave me for that joke.
You forgot.
Oh, isn't that something? I mean, I forget my own jokes. Surely I'm not going to
That is
remember.
no 100%. I 100%. I think that is that's the virtue of continuing to write. Let's be clear. I think there are certain comedians who, for whatever reason, they might only write 1 hour ever, and they kind of just do that hour for the rest of their life. But
It's an hour more than a lot of people write.
exactly. So, but you're the type of comedian who you have jokes that create an album called Live in Between Albums. I don't even know if we even said the actual name until
I
now.
think we did, but
Did
thank
we?
you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
From
Memory.
jokes that didn't have a place on previous albums. So yeah, of course you're going to forget some jokes, but memory is an interesting thing. The deeper I go into an idealistic hole and diving deeper and deeper into idealism as like a philosophy and a worldview and something that's really fascinating to me, there's the mind obviously is kind of in control of reality in this way, when one launches from this point of view. And I don't get behind like the George Berkeley, like the original thought that there's a great God mind that keeps everything together. That's why your bedroom looks the same every time you come in. But and why are you perceiving this physical space to be identical every time if it's only perception and not actually material? But anyway, memory is an interesting component of this. And it's always fascinated me how we can find ways apparently to improve our memory as well. Like as doctors and people will say, these, doing certain exercises, right? Like brain, like quiz books and all those kinds of things supposedly are supposed to be good for your memory, but changing your routine, right? I'm curious if you do this. I try to do this. I noticed the other day that when I put my Camelback, this like water pack backpack, when I go on long hikes, whenever I put it on, I always grab it with my right hand, and I put it over my right shoulder as I'm walking out the door. And so I'm like, I gotta, I try to mix up my brushing hand for my teeth and stuff, to keep my brain fresh. And so I tried to do it with my left hand. I'm left-handed. I grabbed the backpack. I tried it, and I'm like, it's like I've never put on a backpack before. It was so difficult to do, but these are the kinds of things where like you break your routines to try to keep your brain fresh and in growing, and instead of going into degradation. Do you do anything like on purpose anyway when it comes to your memory or keeping your mind sharp in this way, or is it something that doesn't occur to you?
Huh. Thank you for asking. I'll say a couple things. First, a story that this reminds me of that I don't remember where this is from, a theme, but I heard a story of an old man with a long beard is walking, and a young man sees him and says, "That's quite the beard. When you go to sleep at night, do you put it under the covers or over the covers?" And the old man says, "That's a great question. You'd think I'd know the answer, but I guess I just kind of do it automatically. So I'll get back to you tomorrow." Goes home that night, very conscientiously, thinks about it, gets into bed, puts it over the covers. And he's like, well, that doesn't seem right. Puts it under the covers. And he's like, well, that doesn't seem right either. And so he goes back and forth a few times and ultimately just decides to cut it off. So yeah, I mean, we get into these, of course, these grooves. But to answer your question specifically, there are some things that I've done. In the past year, I got a membership to an app called Elevate, which offers like sort of games to help you get better at grammar and spelling and vocabulary and other kinds of, gamifying a kind of academic learning in a way that I'm like, ooh, fun, school, school, but I don't have to, but I want to, and I can. So I have every once in a while something like that. I do try to, I think reading and reading about things that I don't know, reading about the brain and such. Books like Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and everything by Dan Ariely, Predictably Irrational and The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. Arthur C. Brooks, From Strength to Strength. Reading in general, I think is good for the brain, and also then moving the body, so nerd stuff and jock stuff, trying to move at least, periodically throughout the day, as well as hopefully going on like one longer walk when I can outside, seeing green things, trying to keep up with the memory, eating as healthily as I can. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing like jostling ourselves out of our routines, like to a thing that I think about is if somebody I can't have both of these experiences, but I only have my own. But I'm like, I imagine like, let's say there's a person who has their days look identical, or as close to identical as possible. Every day they get up, they do the same things, they go to work, they come home, same. They don't travel except for on the planet hurtling through space. But like in the context of the planet, they just go to and from work. That's about it. See the same people, do the same things. And then on the flip side, there's the person who like a comedian. This week I'm here, this week I'm there. I go home, I come out, I get out. Like every night I'm in a different place. Every day is shaped a little different. I do different podcasts. I see different friends. Like I like that. So I like to imagine that what I do, which I think I imagine I do it, but I also believe I know I do it. For somebody who has a schedule that's very diverse through like day to day, I think it can be very valuable and helpful to have one thing that's the same about each day if every day is different. If not, maybe even more than one, but have at least one thing that's constant day to day. And then for somebody who for every day is constant, be like, at least do something different every day. Do something, walk home a different way from work, or go to a different coffee shop, or call a different person that you don't usually call, or, take in a different piece of art or museum or whatever it might be. So that because it's truly, it's not going to be the same exactly every day, because that how they say the same person cannot step into the same river twice, because very clearly like the water that's in the river right here right now is not the water that's in the river right here a second from now. And also we're like that, we're like those rivers. So even if, like you say, your room looks the same, it's not the same. The mental image of the room is the same, but the actual physicality is I think almost guaranteed 100% different molecules, different atoms, different configuration of just physical, energetic stuff. But yeah, so I think also having a meditation practice, having and some sort of, if not spiritual, at least a spiritual, intellectual, emotional exploration process of whatever kind. I do my best to, explore, I think, all of these things as possible. Like learning about Buddhism is something that is very valuable to me, or I've been reading books by this woman, Byron Katie, and there are paradigms that I'm like, oh yeah, these make sense, and also I don't do all the time. So like to always have things that are sort of inspirational and aspirational. And what was the question?
You nailed it.
It was about memory, I think.
Yeah, it was it was about yeah. See, that's the cool thing about conversation in general, and what I love about, you're just always kind of like, people always say, well, what do you think about that? And it's like, okay, well, we're both about to find out, because I'm just going to start talking and see what I feel in the moment, right? And it's like you said, like the river, how I feel about stand-up comedy is much different than I felt 20 years ago about stand-up comedy. And nothing is forever, nothing is solid in that way. And I do worry about, like, losing my acuity and my memories. There's so many great memories, and there's so many more to be made, that I need to stop worrying about it. I mean, it's a future worry, which, as we know, is kind of a pointless thing. But that's interesting, though. I love the idea of adding one thing that's new, if everything is the same, and adding something that can be the same if everything is always new.
Oh yeah.
That's a great mirror.
I'll add this, maybe even a more specific answer to your question. One of the things that I do each day, unless for some reason I'm like traveling super early and don't get to do, but for most days when I wake up, my morning rituals are meditate for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever I have the time and an inclination for. Then I drink a liter of water while reading something usually peaceful, something by a spiritual teacher, perhaps. And then the third thing that I do is morning pages, a la The Artist's Way, but I usually do it on 750words.com. And then I keep a journal I try to each day be like, what did I do yesterday? And like, fill in all the major points. And if there were like, oh, a conversation with a friend, and I take notes, like the same digital recorder that I use to record my joke ideas. Sometimes, like today, I did a shift at the Park Slope Food Co-op where I walk people to their cars or their homes within a certain radius, and then I walk the cart back to the co-op. And sometimes I have really interesting conversations with people, and I take a note and I'm like, put this in my journal for this day. And when I go through my jokes, I also come across these stories. Sometimes they also end up being jokes, but sometimes I'm just like, oh yeah, I want to remember the guy named Charlie who told me about his stutter and how it kept him out of medical school until he had two different speech therapists offer him one piece of advice each that helped him. And then he became a successful psychiatrist. And maybe I'd remember that without recording it, and maybe I'd remember it by telling it to you, and by telling it to Rini, my girlfriend, and by telling it to whoever I think might be interested in hearing it. But I do think that sometimes codifying it in my journal, or like just making a note to be like, remember this is a thing that I think is noteworthy, even if I never go back and read all of my journals, they're there. I can search them. I can be like, what was I doing on October 31st, 2014. Oh, right, of course. The old Mike Kaplan and friends, including Ryan Singer and Aaron Judge and a surprise inevitable Baron Vaughn show. Yeah, I think that's a thing. I think both your idea of you want to I think you want to let go of the idea that you can remember everything, like the Zen koan, let go or be dragged. Like you don't want to stress out about it. I don't know if I've ever told you my thing about freak out later. Like one time I had vaped some weed into my head and it felt really good for the first time in a while. And I was like, that's great. And then a second later, I was like, oh no, what if I took too much? What if would have been good, but I should have stopped sooner? And I was like, what if I freak out later? And then I had the presence of mind to be like, well, if you're going to freak out later. Like, don't freak out now in addition to freaking out later about whether you'll freak out later, because then you're going to add one freak out for sure, and maybe you won't even need to freak out at all. Like minimum, you could have 0 freakouts, but if you have 1 freak out now, then you can't have 0 freakouts. So freak out later is a policy that I have. And of course, do the things that you can to, learn the empirical data about strengthening memory, and keep a journal if you want to, and keep a recorder and get those notes down. But don't, you don't want to, I feel like the whole middle path in Buddhism is very applicable, at least metaphorically, where it's, the story of the Buddha and his student who plays an instrument, a stringed instrument, and the student says, what should I do? Like, should I try to cling very regimentedly to the teachings, to the practices, or should I, err on the side of being like looser with myself and more calm and not as hard on myself? And the Buddha says, well, when you tune your sitar, or when you tune your stringed instrument, Do you prefer to have the strings too tight or too loose? And it's a very thin razor wire balance, on a tightrope to strike that where fall off this way, fall off that way. Like, yeah, of course you want to. There are things that are important to remember, but it's also important to remember that it's not important to remember everything.
Exactly. Well said. Well, I do want everyone to remember that Live in Between Albums is out now.
I
Everywhere.
thank you so much.
You
Yeah,
can find it everywhere, right?
I believe that anywhere that you can find comedy albums or music albums, anywhere you can find albums, Live in Between Albums. Blonde Medicine's website is a good place to get all the places. But yeah, wherever you stream your stuff, wherever you download your stuff, my website, of course, as well. Ooh, I got to get it on my website. Haven't put it there yet.
So
this has been very.
And the website. Let's shoot everybody your where they can find you online.
Oh, of course. Mike Kaplan, spelled the way that I spell it, is MyQKaplan. Of course, put a .com after it. Put it on social media at Mike Kaplan. Find all my other albums at Mike Kaplan on your various Spotify's and Apple Musics and such. I also have various podcasts that you've been a guest on. You're one of few people who've been on both my podcasts, The Faucet and Broccoli and Ice Cream. The Faucet, not frequently featuring guests, but you, a special, exceptional scenario I was happy to have when your last special and album came out. And I also do send out a fun newsletter every week for free that's at mikekaplan.substack.com. It's got jokes, it's got information, and you can subscribe to that and bonus joke dispatches, and that's at mikekaplan.substack.com. And the only other thing that I feel is important to tell people is the answer to the 3 light bulb riddle.
Yes, thank you for remembering.
Of course.
So,
are you ready?
Oh my God, I just wish I knew the answer.
I mean,
it's 1 up, 1 down, 1 up. But that's going to be my guess, and it's not the right answer, and I'm going to be so upset when I hear this.
You may be upset, but I think you'll also immediately be like, "Oh, of course, very predictable, it'll be very obvious once I tell you the answer." But that's the thing about things that are obvious; they're not always like a magic eye, like an illusion. Like if you don't see it, you don't see it, and like there are many people. If people listening, feel free to pause it now. Continue to make your guesses.
Because the light switches are on the outside of the room. Because the riddle starts with "there's a room," which is always okay. So that's a very non-specific location of the room.
Yeah.
There's a room. And there's 3 light bulbs in the room. Right. So it made me believe, but I do think because my initial thought was like, oh, this is very obvious. You just flip the switches up and down and you can see because you're in the room with the light bulbs. But I think it's a separate room.
You're not in the room. Okay.
Here's the answer.
The answer is, and this is a different one from that prison one we said. So feel free to
killing
explore
people.
that yourself. Yeah, absolutely. No, nothing there. This is just a simple light bulb discussion. Here's how you do it. You turn on one of the light switches, and then 15 minutes later, you turn it off. Then you turn on one of the other ones. Let's say you do that with light switch 1. You turn it on, leave it on for a while, turn it off. Second one, turn on, leave it on. Third one, leave it off. So you were pretty close. It is 2 of them in one position, 1 in another. But the thing that that it's important to do is to turn one on, leave it on, and then turn it off. Because then when you go into the room, you'll see 1 light that is on and 2 lights that are off. The one that's on matches the one that you turned on. The 2 that are off, you feel them. 1 will be cold, 1 will be hot.
I wouldn't have got there. Well done. I wouldn't have got there.
It's good.
That's a great one. God, you know what? This has been years. This has been 2014, dude.
Yeah.
So this has been 8 years.
Yeah.
8+ years.
I have been almost.
Yeah. Every time I've been looking at light switches, Well, about 1 out of every 10 times I flip a light switch, I'll think the riddle.
Ah!
And I just remember, and I could remember not knowing. Thank you. I've been unburdened.
I love it. And you just reminded me that I wanted to remember the concept of, you mentioned sometimes comedians hang out, people hang out and they tell street jokes or share riddles. I'd never really thought of it in terms of this, but this is kind of a street riddle.
Yeah.
Uh, a Christopher Nolan street riddle.
Christopher Nolan street riddle. This has been great. Mike, thanks for coming on today.
Always. Thank you so much.
I'm excited for people to get more of your comedy and where they don't have to be in a specific place, tuned into a specific channel at a specific time. And so now they can enjoy it whenever they want. So that's great. And I'm looking forward to listening to it here later today myself.
Yeah.
As
Thank
I
you, my
jump
friend.
in the LA traffic. It's no better way to get through traffic than going on hikes, sitting in traffic. Those are two of my favorite times to listen to a whole. I like to listen to a stand-up comedy album from beginning to end.
Love it.
So thanks again, buddy. This is wonderful. MikeKaplan.com. It's got all the links and all the good stuff everywhere you need to go. And
thank you so much.
And we'll chat soon, buddy.
Yes.